friends, are you ready for a nice big book haul? Because that's what we're doing today. My name is Lexi and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a good old-fashioned book haul. But before we go ahead and dive into the book haul, I would like to thank today's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. It's my favorite time of the month again, and that means I just got my Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a fantastic resource for readers. Every month, their editorial team vets hundreds of new books to curate a list for you to choose from. Then you can select which book or books you'd like to be delivered right to your door. And in addition to all of their books, they also have an audiobook selection as well. You can also choose to skip the month or choose from their backlist titles too, so you're covered every single month no matter what. I love Book of the Month because I'm constantly discovering new authors to me, and I always get really excited every single month when I get my book box. And this month I chose two titles, A Little Murder and A Little Romance. The first book I chose is A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson. A newlywed librarian begins to suspect that the man she married is a murderer in this spectacularly twisty and deviously clever novel by best-selling author Peter Swanson. And the second book I chose is One Star Romance by Laura Hankin. A struggling writer is forced to walk down the aisle at her best friend's wedding with the man who gave her book a very public 1-star rating in this fresh romantic comedy. If you would like to try Book of the Month for yourself, you can actually use the code BREEZE to get your very first book box for only $9.99. This code and the link can be found down below in my description box. Happy reading. Okay, everyone, so the categories for this particular book haul, let me see if I've got them all. So we've got romance, middle grade, which technically middle grade is an age category, not a genre, but I always put it separately. Fantasy, thrillers and horror, literary fiction, short story collections, and then I have one poetry book and one nonfiction. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in, and let's start with middle grade, because I feel like I haven't talked about middle grade for a bit. Okay, so the first stack of middle grade actually were all very kindly sent to me from HarperCollins, so a big thank you to HarperCollins. There are quite a few that I am so excited to start this summer. The first one is going to be The Myth of Monsters, Medusa. This is book one, Medusa, and it's by Katherine Marsh, and this book literally has everything in it that I think I'm going to love. First of all, it has Greek mythology. Second of all, magical schools. Third of all, it takes place in freaking Italy. So it's literally my dream come true in a book. The book is following Ava. Ava one day accidentally injures a classmate, I'm pretty sure, when she loses control of her powers, and she is sent away to a mysterious international boarding school. And this mysterious international boarding school was literally founded by the Olympian gods, and it resides in Venice. I don't need to know anymore. I really want to read this book so badly, I cannot even tell you. The next book is Adia, Kelbara and the Circle of Shamans, and this is by Hendrix. This looks so freaking good. And Adia has it rough because her family believes that she's actually cursed and that she is possessed, I want to say by a demon, is that right? A demon-possessed child who brings misfortune. One day she accidentally, I think, lets out an earthquake in her village, and so she decides to go to this academy, and the academy that she's going to, I believe, is for cooking and baking, if I'm getting that correct. But while she is there, she actually discovers that the emperor of her kingdom is actually possessed by a demon, and now she has to try to figure out a way to reverse this and save her realm. It sounds really good. There's a lot of layers just to the synopsis alone. I think it's gonna be really fun. I love stories like this. I love stories where our character is discovering their powers and they're kind of going on this big adventure and a big journey. I think this is gonna be fantastic, and I can't wait to read this. I was also very kindly sent the paperback version of Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. I have the hardcover edition, but I think I might just keep the paperback because I just love paperbacks. When I was younger, I used to only prefer having the hardcover versions of books for some reason, but now that I'm older, I don't know, I prefer paperback. What do you prefer? Tell me in the comments right now. Do you prefer paperback or hardcover books? Amari is about a girl girl named Amari, and her brother, I think Quentin, mysteriously disappears one year. And it's about her trying to find out what happened to him, and then she gets invited to this kind of like summer camp secret society type deal. And I think that was the last place where Quentin was found. She discovers actually that everyone who goes to this place has magical powers, including her. It is so wonderful. I've already read it. I highly recommend it. 5 stars. I thought it was so magical and wonderful, and I'm really excited to have this version, and I'm actually really excited to continue on in the series. Then we have Soman Chainani's, I guess, like newest series, and it's called The Rise of the School for Good and Evil. If you are familiar at all with the School for Good and Evil, you'll know that I love it so much. It's amazing. This is kind of like the origins of that school. So in the first series, it's about a mythical school where there is one school for good and one school for evil, and you either learn how to become a villain or like a princess and a prince and a hero. And this is about the origins. It's about the brothers and their journey and why they created the school. I'm very excited. I love fairy tales, and Soman Chainani is so funny. That's something that I just really admire, when a writer can make you laugh while reading. I think it's really hard because I think a lot of comedy is actually physical, and it's about seeing how somebody is reacting in real time with their expressions and their body language. And so when you can write something and it can translate to just making you laugh out loud, I think you're a phenomenal writer. And I think he is a phenomenal writer, because every single book that I've read from him is just a 10 out of 10 and so funny. And then finally, I have Lightfall, The Girl and the Galdurian. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is by Tim Probert. Look at how stunning this is. I'm gonna read the back for this one. It says, deep in the heart of Irpa stands the salty pig's tonics and tinctures home of the wise pig wizard and his adopted granddaughter Bee. As the keepers of the endless flame, they live a quiet and peaceful life. All that changes when Bee meets Cad, a member of the Galdurians, a race thought to be long extinct. Cad believes if anyone can help him find his missing people, it's the pig wizard. Fearing the pig wizard's safety, Bee and Cad set out across Irpa to find him, while danger fights its way out of the shadows and into the light. And that's it for all of the middle grade that I have. So now let's go ahead and move on to fantasy. Okay, here is the lovely stack of fantasy books. Let's start with the first one, which I really don't think I've mentioned yet in a haul, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and this is by Brandon Sanderson. We're following 2 different people, Yumi and then also the Nightmare Painter. All I know is that they come together and they team up to go on a journey. Next up is the book The Honey Witch, and this is by Sydney J. Shields, and this is another Patreon book club book pick. This book is about, well, a honey witch. This book is about Marigold, and Marigold doesn't really feel like she fits into society. Think Bridgerton vibes, okay? And then one day her grandma comes back from out of town. She's like, hey, you're actually a witch. And her mom pulls kind of like a Mom from Halloween Town move, and she's like, no, you're not, Mari. And Mari's like, I want to go with my grandma and become a witch. And so she does. But then apparently if she decides to become a witch, that means that she is cursed to never find her soulmate or never be in love. Next up, while I was actually purchasing The Honey Witch, a bookseller recommended this to me. And I was like, okay, if you're going to go out of your way to recommend me a book, I'm absolutely gonna buy it. And that is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. This book sounds so freaking good. Okay, so listen, it's about a girl who is trying to defeat the villain. Every single time she does that, she dies. She is defeated by the villain every single time. She's literally stuck in a time loop, and she remembers every single time that she has tried and failed. And so at the very end, she just goes, fuck it. If I can't die the hero, maybe I'll win as the villain. And so she decides, instead of being the hero and trying to kill the villain, she's just gonna become the villain. I mean, like, doesn't that sound so fun? And then the last book for the fantasy I purchased was Leigh Bardugo's The Familiar. Oh my God. Have you ever seen in your freaking life a more beautiful, it's so pretty. Look at the sprayed edges. Look at that sleek cover, but then also, oh my God. Are you ready for this? Stop it. And what is this about? Great question. I don't know. I know it's about vampires, and I know that it was written by my queen, Leigh Bardugo. And honestly, all I need to know is that one of my favorite authors wrote a book about vampires, and it's gonna be adult and scary and wonderful. And I was like, you know what? I'll buy it. That is it as far as fantasy. Now let's go ahead and jump into romance. Okay, so I am doing a new thing. I have discovered about myself that there are some books that I actually prefer reading on my Kindle. And you know what those books are? Romance books. I don't know why, but my favorite thing in the world is just to get a nice, silly little iced coffee, bring my Kindle somewhere, and just start devouring romance. It is the best. So all of these books actually are gonna be ebooks, and I will be super, super brief about them. I think I only have a couple to mention, but I have purchased all of these for my Kindle. The first one is Emily Henry's Funniest Story. This particular book is following our main protagonist, whose fiance has apparently broken up with her because he wanted to marry instead his childhood bestie. She is kind of stranded now in Michigan because she followed him to Michigan. She has her dream job as being a children's librarian at a public library, I think, but it doesn't pay enough, and so she has to get a roommate, and she decides what better roommate than her ex-fiance's best friend that he ran away with's fiance. Okay, so Miles is Petra's old fiance, like they were engaged, and then they broke up. Petra ran away with her fiance, and now Miles is gonna be this girl's roommate, whose name I don't remember. And so he ends up moving in with her, and they are roommates, and they're kind of, I think, just like going through it together, because honestly, that would suck. And then sparks presumably happen. The next one is going to be Abby Jimenez's Just for the Summer. This book sounds so funny. So this book is about two people who believe that they are cursed to never find love. They have both realized that whoever they date, once they break up, that person meets the love of their life and they get married. And so they decide maybe we should both date each other and then we'll break each other's curses and we'll both find the love of our lives after we date. But then I think I think they might end up together. And then the last two books that I purchased are actually the two books that are in the That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon series by Kimberly Lemming. I won't tell you what the other two are about, but the first book is following a girl named Cinnamon who ends up accidentally going on an adventure with a demon that she saves one night when she's drunk. And it is a very, very steamy romance. I really have to read you this because this is the best. This is the best thing I've ever read in my life. Okay, I'm obviously on Goodreads and I follow a lot of my friends on Goodreads. And one of the people who I follow, who's also my friend, is Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction. She gave this book 2 stars, which is absolutely fine. But the review that she put on Goodreads is so spot on that I have to read it. It says, this is so funny. This one is for all the cozy fantasy girlies who want raging smut. I have never read a more accurate description for a book series in my entire life. I know Ashley didn't love it, but if that sounds good to you, pick up the first book and then maybe pick up the second too, because that's what I'm gonna be doing. And those are all of the books that I have purchased on my Kindle, and I'm very excited to read over the summer. By the way, I do get questions on this quite often. The Kindle case is just clear, and then everything else, these are all like the pop socket and then all of the stickers, it's all from Etsy, and they're from random different shops. So I don't have like a central shop to steer you in the direction for, but if you're looking for cute Kindle stickers, I highly, highly recommend checking out Etsy. I just like love Etsy so much. And then I have, it's like a skin. So I have a lavender skin that I think I also purchased from Etsy. It was really hard to get on actually, but I did it and now it's cute. Now let's go ahead and dive into thrillers and horror. The first book that I purchased is a horror, and it's called, every time I say horror on here, it always sounds like I'm saying whore, but I'm saying horror. Anyways, so the first horror that I purchased is I think it's called Mothering, but it looks like Mother Thing, right? Yes. It's by Ansley Hogarth, and I purchased this because it was all over TikTok. So many people were raving about this book. It looks so good. It's actually a literary fiction horror, which I always think is a really cool concept. And it's about a woman who ends up moving in with her husband. Her mother-in-law dies tragically, and she ends up haunting them. Now, I have heard that this is quite graphic, which I did didn't know. Like I purchased it and then I saw a review on it that said that this is actually really graphic and like kind of gory and really scary, but also there's a couple of scenes in here that will turn your stomach. And now I'm scared to read it, but I still want to because I think the concept sounds so cool. I'm very interested to read it still, even though now I'm scared because I don't do well with gore, you guys. Next up is a Sally Hepsworth one, and this is called Darling Girls. And honestly, you know it's a great beach poolside book when literally the cover is of a pool. This book is following three sisters, and these three sisters have actually been adopted by a woman I think called Miss Fairchild, if I'm getting that right. Yes, Miss Fairchild. And everyone seems to think that they have this idyllic fairy tale upbringing with her, but that is far from the truth. And actually, eventually one day, the three of them run away from her. And then years and years later, there is a body discovered on her premises. I don't know what happens to her. I don't know if it's her body, but she's like not in the picture when this happens. Now, I think the three girls are called back, and they're called back first as witnesses, but then are they called back as suspects? We don't know. Next, we have Pet, and this is by Katherine Chidgey, I think. Technically, this is also a literary fiction book, but I'm putting it in this category because I think it's also categorized potentially as like a thriller mystery too. It's following Justine, and Justine gets a new teacher one day at her school, and she becomes kind of enamored with her teacher along with everyone else. And she wants to become the teacher's pet because she's obsessed with her teacher. And then I think what's actually happening is something is going on at the school. I don't know if it's like thievery or like a big scandal, but something is happening and it's being covered up. And I think it's just Justine finding out all of this stuff while also trying to become the teacher's pet. I feel like the two are gonna merge somehow, but I don't know how based on the synopsis alone. Next up, we have The Other Half, and this is by Charlotte Vassell. This, you guys, this is a rich people problems story. You guys know every single time I pick up one of those stories, I like eat it up. Bad Summer People was one of the best books. Highly recommend that for summer, by the way, but also Pineapple Street, incredible. 5 stars, amazing. So I'm really hoping to love this one as well. We're following a cast of characters. Basically, they all get together for this one rich guy's birthday, and then his girlfriend ends up dead, and now they're all suspects, and we get to figure out who killed her and why. And you guys, I'm excited, okay? I am. Next up, we have the reappearance of Rachel Price, and this is by Holly Jackson. Holly Jackson is kind of the queen of YA thriller mysteries right now. She wrote The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, or A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Freaking loved it. Scared me a little too much, but still was a 5-star read, and I'm very excited to read this book. The book is following Belle, and Belle's mom mysteriously disappeared years and years ago. I think like a true crime documentary starts, and it's going to be researching what happened to Belle's mom. And then as soon as they start filming, her mom just like completely reappears again and is like, oh my God, hey, I'm here. And while she is talking, she's saying all of these things that happened to her and all of these like big secrets, where she was and everything. And the more Belle listens, the more she distrusts her mom, and she thinks her mom is lying. But what is her mom lying about? And then finally, the last thriller that I have here is called Looking Glass Sound, and this is by Catriona Ward, and I'm very excited for this one. I'm excited for a multitude of reasons. The main one though is that it takes place off the coast of Maine, and every single time I hear a book start off with that premise, I buy it. So it's taking place off the coast of Maine in a little cottage, I think on like a cozy little island, and it's following a writer who is trying to, I want to say like write a mystery, but while he is there, weird things start happening in the cottage. Like things are getting moved, notes are being left, and he's like, wait a minute, I thought I was here by myself. What the is going on? And honestly, it sounds good. Like, is it gonna be a haunted house? Is somebody in the house? God, I hope not, because that is so terrifying to me. Like, I'd rather have a ghost than someone just like chilling in my house, you know what I mean? And that's it for the thriller and mystery pile. Now let's go ahead and go on to, I'm just gonna like put these 3 together. So we've got poetry, nonfiction, and the short story collections. Okay, so this next stack is relatively short. The first one is a poetry collection, and look at how tiny it is. But this was really, really good. This is called The Orange and Other Poems by Wendy Cope, and this was a really whimsical, fun poetry collection. I really enjoyed several in here. It's very like whimsical, they all rhyme, and they're all reflections on different aspects of life. My favorite poem in the collection is The Orange, which is just about basically celebrating the tiny little fun moments in the everyday life, like sharing an orange with your friends. So love this. The next one is the only nonfiction book that I purchased, and it is called The White Album by Joan Didion. I really don't know anything about this collection other than the fact that Joan Didion is really, really well loved in the literary world. So many people really love her essays specifically, and I've heard great things about this essay collection. She writes about her experience, I think in the 1960s and 70s, and I want to say it's in California. Next up, these are all short story collections. Let's start with Send Nudes, and this is by Saba Sams. This is just a short story collection, and every single short story is supposed to be depicting what it's like to be in your 20s as a woman. So I don't exactly know the specifics, but I've heard that the vibes are supposed to be kind of funny and insightful, and I love the concept of this so much. Next up is a more whimsical slash surrealist collection. It's called Awayland, and this is by Ramona Osbel, and I don't know anything about this collection other than it has very, very high praise online, and also they are all supposed to be whimsical, interesting, quirky little weird stories. Next up is a collection I actually already finished, and it's called Bliss Montage, and this is by Ling Ma. This was fantastic. The collection itself, like, it varies. Every single story varies. One of the stories is called G, and it's about two frenemies basically who are experimenting with this fake drug called G. Some of the tales are exploring her heritage. Some of the tales are exploring toxic or abusive relationships. Some are exploring culture. Some are exploring like mother-daughter dynamics. It's interesting. I feel like it's a really well-rounded collection, and the writing in this is really, really great. Next up, we have Ghost Lover, and this is by Lisa Taddeo, I think. This is a book talk darling. This is on the side of TikTok that I'm usually on, which is like a literary fiction slash weird girl fiction stories, and I actually saw this from quite a few TikToks, and I was really intrigued, so I decided to order it. Or did I buy it? It says, in these 9 riveting stories, which include 2 Pushcart Prize winners and a finalist for the National Magazine Award, Lisa Taddeo brings to life the fever of obsession, the blindness of love, and the mania of grief. Next up, we have The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, and this is by Disha Vilya, I think. I'm so excited to read this one. I think that the cover is really beautiful. And it says on the back, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies explores the raw and tender places where Black women and girls dare to follow their true desires. I've started to read this, and I have to say the first story in this collection was so wonderful and moving and fantastic. I'm really excited to read all of these stories in this collection. I think it's going to be so excellent. And I'm predicting this is going to be a 5-star read. Next up, we have Eyes, Guts, Throat, and Bones, and this is by Moira Fowley. And this is, I think, supposed to be horror, but it's also supposed to have elements of like fantasy. It is a sapphic collection, and yeah, it's all about like, I think, horror and scary stuff. And those are all of the books that I have for my short story, poetry, and nonfiction collection. Now let's go on to my biggest category, and that is going to be literary fiction. I kind of go through phases, we've talked about this, I kind of go through phases. Every fall, I go through I just want to read scary books and cozy fantasies type of a mood. But we're in peak spring, summertime, okay? It's about to be hot every single day, and I just gravitate towards romances, contemporary books, and lots of literary fiction. And that is very reflected in this because there are so many literary fictions that I want to talk about. Let's talk about the first one, which I'm actually almost finished with, and that is Rude. And this is by Mona Awad. I actually picked this up because, again, I heard about this from the site of TikTok that I'm on, which is like weird girl fiction or strange girl fiction. I was so intrigued by the premise of this, and I have to tell you, I think it might be like a 5-star read. It's so good. So this book is following Mirabelle, and Mirabelle's mother actually passes away, and when she visits for her mother's funeral, she ends up finding out kind of about like this, it's like a secret spa slash secret secret society that her mother was part of, and it's really just like a cult and they're worshiping beauty. It is wild. It is such a wild ride so far. It's not for people who don't like strange things, so don't pick this up if you don't like strange. It is in my literary fiction section, but this could very easily be in a section all on its own where it's just talking about surrealism writing. The entire book itself feels sort of like you're in a fever dream. The images like blend one into another. I'm freaking loving it, but this book is not going to be for everyone. If you loved the absurd strangeness of Bunny, especially towards like the end of the book, but you wanted more of that, pick this up. Next up, I picked up 2 books from Melissa Broder. First one is called Death Valley. All I know about this is it's about a woman who randomly one day goes to the desert, and then when she goes outside, she sees a big cactus, and the cactus has something that looks like a door, and she walks into it and into another realm. Listen, I heard that and I was like, that sounds so fascinating. But again, this is considered more literary fiction and more surrealism. So it's not technically like fantasy. It is gonna have a commentary on something. I just don't know what it's about, but I'm really, really excited. Everyone who's read this has said it's really strange, but like in the best way. And then the next one I got from Melissa Broder is called The Pisces. And The Pisces is following Lucy. Lucy, I think, is like finishing up her dissertation on Sappho. And while she is finishing up her dissertation, she ends up falling in love with a swimmer. Now, I think things turn kind of weird. It says a masterful blend of vivid realism and giddy fantasy. The Pisces is a story about falling in obsessive love with a merman. I mean, yes, okay? The answer is yes. Next up, we have some books that I have actually already read. So if you're interested in those, I'll go ahead and leave those vlogs down below, but I haven't actually hauled them before. So the first one is Fruit of the Dead, and this is by Rachel Lyon. And this is a Persephone and Demeter retelling. And notice that I didn't say Persephone and Hades, okay? Because the focus is definitely more on the mother-daughter dynamic and relationship. This is about a mom and a daughter, modern day times. The daughter's name is Corey, and Corey has just turned 18, and she is a camp counselor. And at the end of the session, she's feeling really, really lost. One of the dads of the kids who was at the camp that she was a counselor for, he really likes her in a creepy sort of way because he's an old man and she literally barely turned 18. Ew! Anyways, he is interested in her and she is intrigued by him, not because he's super attractive or sexy, but because he's very powerful. And she can tell he's very, very powerful. And so when he offers her an internship, really, he just wants to stare at her while she takes care of his kids. She's intrigued and she says yes. She signs an NDA because he's a very powerful, big billionaire man, saying that she's not gonna tell anyone where she's going or who she's working with. And this, rightfully so, absolutely panics her mom. And so the story is about Corey kind of falling into this dark world of this billionaire and her mom trying desperately to find out where she is and rescue her daughter because she knows something is wrong. I won't tell you anything else, but I will say if it sounds sexy, it's not. It's really, really not. It's way more of a story of the mom and the daughter and how far a mother will go to rescue her child. And also, it has a lot of commentary on the pharmaceutical industry, which I thought was really interesting and very well done. Next up, we have Greta and Valden, and this is by Rebecca K. Riley. This is a book about 2 siblings who are roommates, and they're both queer. It's kind of told in different perspectives as you go along. The first take is the woman, Greta, who is the sister, and she starts off her tale basically with unrequited love for another woman, and then we follow Valden, who is trying to get over his ex, who he is still desperately in love with. And the story is just about their experiences in love and their relationship with each other. Next up. I debated not putting these in here, but the thing is, just because I did not enjoy these books does not mean you won't. And so I'm putting these in here so that if the premise sounds wonderful to you, maybe you'll end up picking them up. But just full disclaimers, I didn't like the next 2 books. The first one is Mrs. S, and this is by Kay Patrick. Sounds wonderful. It is a story about a woman who goes to an all-girls boarding school and she becomes what's called like a matron. She kind of watches over the girls. And while she is there, she falls in love with the the headmaster's wife. It didn't really work for me, but I feel like the premise sounds so fun. And then the next one is called Thirst, and this is by Mariana Usick. And this is about two women. One is a vampire, one is a woman in modern day times, and they eventually meet, and it's about them meeting. It really isn't though. It really is told in two different perspectives. We're following the life of this vampire and how she became a vampire, and then we're also following the life of this woman and specifically how she's dealing with the grief of her mom, who is sick right now and in the process of dying. And it's about them eventually meeting and potentially yearning for each other at some point. I don't know. Next up, we have another two books that I've read, and I gave both of these 5 stars. The first one is I'm a Fan, and this is by Sheena Patel. This is a weird book. This book is not gonna be for like a lot of people. In fact, I would wager this book is not gonna be for the majority of people who read this. I'm not selling it well. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was so interesting. This is a very messy book about an obsessive, unhealthy, unlikable protagonist. And the protagonist is in a relationship with her loving and good boyfriend, but she is actually in love and obsessed with a person who he like strikes up an affair with her even though he's married, but actually he was just using her as a rebound because he's really in love with an American influencer who like they broke up. And so it's about this woman who I think is unnamed the whole time, and she is obsessed with him, but she's also obsessed with the influencer that he used to be in love with. It's about her obsessing over this man and obsessing over this influencer, and it has a lot of great commentary on so many things, so many really great observations and things. I thought it was really, really interesting. Don't go into this if you need to like your main characters. You're not gonna like her, okay? You're not gonna like him. You're not gonna like anybody. That's not the point. The point was just the drama. The next one is a translated work, and it's called Dogs of Summer, and this is by Andrea Abreu. And this is, well, it's about two girls who are best friends, and they're both young. I think they're like 13, 12 and 13 maybe. It's about one specific summer when they end up going to the existential question of, do I want to be with her or do I want to be her? Do you know what I mean? So it's following their friendship as the main character just like loves her bestie. She loves her best friend, but she can't tell if she wants to be her because she feels like her best friend is so much cooler than her, or if maybe she just has like feelings for her romantically, or if she just loves her best friend as a best friend. It's a book exploring like the complexities of girlhood and also like the messy obsessiveness over friendships when we're younger. It's very beautiful. It's very well done. It's definitely very, very adult, and there are some really tragic things that happen in here. So look up trigger warnings if you're interested and you're sensitive to any topics, but I loved it. I thought it was great. Next up is a book called The Husbands, and this is by Holly Gramazio. Now listen, I was very interested in this book beforehand, hence why I have it. But I am even more interested because recently I saw a Kayla vlog from Books and Lala where she says that this was a 5-star and that she like is obsessed with this book. And I honestly have like similar taste in her weird taste in books. So as soon as she said that, I was like, I need to bump this up my TBR. It's about a woman who shows up one day to her apartment and there's just like a man chilling there. Apparently they're married and they have lots of pictures, I think, of each other in their apartment. And she's like, I don't get it because I've never seen you in my life. And then he disappears to the attic, and when he emerges, it's not him, it's a new man. And so she gets, you know, the song It's Raining Men? Those are the vibes. It's raining men. The whole book is just her getting new man after new man after new man. And honestly, I wish dating in 2024 was that easy. The next book I have here is a book that I found from one of my favorite book talkers. I think her name is Haley. I like love all of her content and I love all of her book recommendations. If you like literary fiction specifically, I think you would love her book talk channel. But this is, I want to say, like her favorite book of the year. I've never heard of this book and I've never seen this book before. Luckily, my Barnes & Noble had it. I'm so excited about that. But it's called Perfume and Pain, and this is by Anna Dorn. So the book is following Astrid, and Astrid is a writer writer who is not being very successful at her craft and at what she's doing right now. She feels very, very lost, and it's about her striking up a bunch of different relationships with women as she's trying to hone in on her craft and become a better writer. I really don't know. I don't know a lot about the premise. I just know that it's a messy writer having messy relationships and falling in love, and it sounds fun, honestly. It sounds really fun. Next up, we have a book called Mostly Dead Things, and this is by Kristen Arnett. And this book also sounds really quirky, which I tend to like in books. It's about a woman whose father was a taxidermist, and she's working in a taxidermist shop, and then he passes away. And it's about her grappling with her grief and trying to move on and process it. And it's also about her at the same time grappling with the loss of her first love, who turns out to be her sister-in-law. Like, that just sounds so messy and entertaining and interesting. So next up is a book called Brutes, and this is by Diz Tate. I don't know what to expect about this. I've just heard that this is a weird little book about a group of girls who I guess are all mean. Okay, we are down to the final 4 books of the book haul. The first one is called In Memoriam, and this is by Alice Wynne. So this book is following 2 men in 1914, Henry and Sydney. Henry and Sydney start to kind of develop feelings for each other. They are best friends, but they're not expressing how they feel, obviously because of the time and also because they don't think that it's going to be reciprocated. And so Henry decides to enlist in World War I so that he can be far away from his feelings, but his best friend ends up following him, and it's about them in the war as their passions for each other are ignited. Next up is a book I'm very excited to read. It's called When We Lost Our Heads by Heather O'Neill. This book is following 2, I'm gonna just like read the back because the back sounds really good. It says, charismatic Marie is the daughter of the richest man in the 19th century in Montreal. She has everything she wants except for a best friend, until clever, scheming Sadie moves to the neighborhood. Immediately united by their passion and their intensity, Marie and Sadie's games soon become tinged with risk and even violence. How is my battery dead? I literally was just charging it. Okay, besties, what you have not seen is that my camera has died throughout this book haul twice. I think I need a new camera battery, but it's about to die again. And so I am just going to give you the speediest last 2 book synopsises ever so that hopefully this doesn't die again. This book is The Animal, or it's just called Animal. This is by Lisa Tato. I saw this again on Book Talk. I don't really know a lot about it other than the fact that it is a literary fiction all about female rage. And then the last book is called Worry, and this is by Alexandra Tanner. And the only thing I know about this is that it's a literary fiction, specifically focusing on 2 sisters who become roommates and their relationship with themselves and also, I think, with their mom in New York City. And I think that both of them are feeling really lost. That is the only thing that I know. I think though, you guys, that is it. Those are all of the books in the book haul. Thank you guys so much for watching. My question of the day is the one that I asked earlier, which is, what do you prefer, paperback or a hardcover book? Let me know down below. A huge thank you again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. All of their links will be down below, and again, I highly recommend checking them out. And then also a huge thank you and shout out to all of the members in my Patreon over at Fox and Wood. If you're interested in more content, I will leave all of the links for that down below as well. And a big thank you to my Ink and Quill Club members who are all the executive producers of every video that I create. I love you guys so much, and until next time, book lovers, keep your head in the clouds and your heart in a book. Bye!